afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're having a great day. Combine next week. So quarterback talk, draft talk going on aplenty. Sam Acho from NFL Live on ESPN, who he thinks the first quarterback off the draft board should be.
I think that Shedeur Sanders should be the first quarterback off the board between him and Cam Ward. And the reason why is that Cam Ward's style of play is very, it's kind of all over the place, which can be good in college. When you get to NFL, you're not playing against collegiate type of players. You're playing against guys like Myles Garrett, guys like Micah Parsons, all pro level freak athletes. So you can't just run around like you did in college. We saw Caleb Williams struggle this year because he used to run around and play like it was high school football, backyard football in college, but it's not the same in the pros. Shedeur Sanders, I feel like, is more of a cerebral quarterback. He's not as athletic, not even close. One thing he does better than I think most is his ability to anticipate throws. He got a chance to be tutored and mentored under the tutelage of Tom Brady in so many ways. And so for me, I think Shedeur Sanders has the mind of it, where he's going to have the athleticism, but he's not going to be able to use it because those athletes are so great on the other side of the football.
Again, Sam Acho saying he thinks Shedeur Sanders should be the first quarterback off the board. A veteran who will be released by the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, has been tied to the Browns. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, on all that talk about Rodgers coming to Cleveland.
Why does Aaron Rodgers' name continue to surface?
If you Google Aaron Rodgers, he is connected to every team who needs a quarterback.
Sure.
And so it's not just the Browns, but the Browns are the convenient, ask Mikey, he'll eat anything, right? Remember the old commercial? Ask Cleveland. They'll do anything. And it's a well-deserved reputation. But that's my only answer to why he's connected to the Browns.
Interesting. Aaron Rodgers connected to pretty much everybody, but I tend to agree. I don't see how he fits here. All right. Shedeur Sanders gaining momentum with a lot of people is a guy the Browns will try to draft if he's there at number 2. Plays Madden. Talked about the team he likes to play with most when he plays Madden.
I don't even play Madden. I can play Madden.
You know who I play with?
Yeah, I can play with anybody though. He can only play with one team.
What team?
Brown.
Okay.
That's the only team.
Okay.
I like how
they getting ready.
I like how they move around, bro. That's the only team he can play with.
That boy getting ready.
Anybody else, it's trash.
I like how they move around on there. I like the setup.
There you go. Shedeur Sanders likes to play Madden with the Browns. Must mean he's coming to Cleveland, right? We'll see. All right, Jaxson Dart reportedly won't make it past the first 7 picks of the draft, according to one NFL scout. Just too many quarterback-needy teams, to be honest. He has the potential to be the best quarterback in this class. The Giants, Jets, Raiders all have a serious interest in taking Dart early on. Has turned the heads of many scouts with his impressive frame, lead accuracy. Dart was PFF's highest graded passer in college this past season, a better grade than Caleb Williams, who was last year's number 1, ever had in the season while he was in college. Turn our attention to the Cavaliers, still on the All-Star break. They'll get back at it in Brooklyn on Thursday. Kendrick Perkins on who he thinks the biggest threat to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference is.
The Cavs are the biggest threat to the Celtics. And look, they went all in. They obviously went and got DeAndre Hunter at the trade deadline. I love that move by the Cavs. But the two bigs, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley is going to be the X factor on whether or not this team goes to the NBA Finals. He's just that damn good on both ends of the floor. Donovan Mitchell, we know that he can elevate to another level for us, being able to be a guy that's the best player in the 7-game series. They are a legit threat to the Celtics. They are the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics, and they also got great depth. People don't talk about Max Strus enough. We know what he's capable of doing. He showed that with the Miami Heat when they went to the NBA Finals. So I love everything about this Cavs team, and I love what Kenny Atkinson has brought to this organization.
Kendrick Perkins thinking the Cavs are legitimate NBA title contenders. The home of the Cavs will have a new name, kind of. Instead of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, it is now Rocket Arena, as the Rock Entertainment Group ushers in a new chapter It'll be the 30th anniversary for the arena. Now it will be referred to as Rocket Arena. Guardians getting things rolling out in Goodyear, Arizona. Full squad will be together in a couple of days. Shane Bieber threw a 15-pitch bullpen, his first off the mound since undergoing Tommy John surgery in April a couple days ago. Bieber says so far so good.
Felt great. Felt natural. Felt, like I said earlier, it felt like riding a bike, and was very happy to do it. It's been a long time coming and a lot of preparation leading up to this point, so happy to continue it. About what I expected, maybe a little bit better. Like I said, it was not surprising, but I was happy to have that result. It was coming out clean, free and easy, and I'm really happy with it today.
Again, Bieber went Tommy John surgery last April, so May, June, July, they're not going to rush him. They'll want to build up the arm strength and make sure he's good to go. Mike Chernoff, general manager of the Guardians, talked about how optimistic the front office is about what they have assembled as far as pitching goes, both the starters and the relief corps.
You know, our bullpen had been so strong last year. We had like an historically good bullpen, especially those back four in Class A. Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith, and Tim Herron just pitched exceptionally well last year. But they had to pick up a lot of slack from the starting rotation. You know, we had Tanner Bybee, who had a really solid year last year, but a lot of ups and downs from other guys. And especially with losing Cobb and Boyd at the end of the year this year, we felt like it was important to bring in a crop of young guys, and that's Ortiz and Ciccone and some other guys in our system that could compete for spots, but had some real upside to them. And then also to try to find a way to bring Shane back. And we're really excited both about Shane's clubhouse presence and everything he brings, but also as he returns from the Tommy John surgery, what he can obviously do on the field for us. Fans only see the external acquisitions that we make, right? And so it's the guys like Ciccone and Ortiz and Bieber. But I would say, you know, the majority of the work that we do, and especially that our coaches do in the offseason, is actually focused on the internal guys that we have. Our team was so young last year, and so this goes for both the position players and the pitchers. So it's a little bit shorter of an offseason for these guys, but especially in the rotation with some of the young pitchers that maybe didn't have the year that they wanted to have or that we thought they could have had last year. This was a big offseason for real development, and we feel very optimistic about what we're seeing just in early returns in the first week of camp.
And the Guardians did add Paul Sewald to the bullpen. You've got Ortiz and Ciccone that he mentioned, starting rotation, Logan Allen. Hopefully Tristan McKenzie comes back. So there are numbers, and you usually need plenty of numbers when you're assembling a successful pitching staff, both in the rotation and in the bullpen. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We turn our attention to the Browns, specifically the quarterback position. Bill Barnwell from ESPN, from NFL Live, talking about Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, which one he thinks will go number one.
Shedeur Sanders is the more cerebral quarterback, the more polished quarterback. I think he's going to step in and be a better fit. But look at the Final Four of the NFL this year and the quarterbacks who are playing. Patrick Mahomes, a guy who you could have made those same criticisms of during his time in school, who refined that stuff with Andy Reid and turned into a superhero. Josh Allen at Wyoming, same thing. You go to the NFC side of things. Jalen Hurts, a more refined quarterback to me, but someone who still is a explosive player, part of the quarterback run game. And then you go to Washington and Jaden Daniels. Those are four guys who are explosive, great athletes, transcendent players in terms of what they do out of structure. I think Shedeur Sanders is great within structure, but with Cam Ward, I just think there's the ability out of structure that's going to really tantalize teams and maybe create the potential for more upside than you have with the Shedeur Sanders at the NFL level.
Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, both very true, and it'll divide teams as to which quarterback you prefer.
Well, I've been saying that his breakdown was exactly what I've said the last 3 weeks, and I couldn't agree with him more. Here's the thing that you get with Shedeur Sanders. You know what you're probably going to get. You know what the finished product's going to be. But Cam Ward, that's exactly right. His out-of-structure stuff. Now, with some offensive coordinators, out-of-structure is not great. And if you're not a generational talent, out-of-structure is not a good thing. And you're right. Those 4 guys you mentioned, they're elite players, both within structure and out of structure. Now, what people don't talk about with Mahomes and Allen is they do a lot within structure as well. But what you get now, if you don't have a generational talent, those are going to be mistakes. Those keep the play alive. We saw it this year with the Browns a little bit with Deshaun Watson. That can also be harmful to your offensive line, to your defense, to your run game. So there's a lot to be said about having a guy who's within structure and you know what you're going to get. Some coaches like that control. I think Stefanski's one of those guys. I agree. I think Cam Ward has a maybe a higher ceiling, but you know exactly what you're going to get with Shedeur Sanders, and he's not too far behind.
Yeah, and the thing that I would also say about Ward, there's a lower floor. So the risk, it's a risk-reward thing, and it depends on what you look at and what you like with Ward. This is kind of interesting as well. So 2025 quarterback carousels, where the top names will end up. This is from the 33rd team. Those are the guys that are former NFL executives and likes. So Russell Wilson, most likely team, they say the New York Giants. Other possibilities, Browns and Jets. Kirk Cousins, they say staying with the Falcons. I don't see that, but I could be wrong. Other possibilities, the Browns and the 49ers. Again, that's from the 33rd team. I question what. Remember, the Browns wanted to trade for Russell Wilson when they traded for Deshaun Watson, and he would not revoke his no-trade clause. So the idea of Russell Wilson coming here, maybe because he's desperate, but I wouldn't count on it.
Well, no, there's 2 things. Russell Wilson, I was actually surprised with his play last year. I thought he did a pretty good job. I think Kirk Cousins is a great fit here. Now, everybody says he's a bridge quarterback. Well, I will argue that a bridge quarterback comes down to the run game because any quarterback can be successful if there's better down and distance, and that's where the Browns have really struggled. So I think Kirk Cousins is a better fit. But what you get as you bring up Shedeur Sanders and you bring up Cam Ward and Cousins and Wilson, the fit is very important. The defense that team has, the skill guys they have, the so-called culture, what everybody talks about. Those things are very there's no other position that's more important in sports than the quarterback, but there's no other position that relies on everybody else being good, including the coaches, including the play. You name it, everybody. Now, those transcendent guys, they can make up for a lot of mistakes. But most quarterbacks need all that stuff around them, and those 2 guys are it. And for me, Kirk Cousins makes a ton of sense. He was very successful with Stefanski with this play action boot kind of concept.
All right, another name out there, Tony Grossi, longtime Browns reporter from ESPN Cleveland, talking about Daniel Jones.
Do you think Daniel Jones, being as young as he is, may command more money than what the Browns are able to give?
Well, that's going to be the key factor because they're strapped. We know that. I've written about the salary cap constraints. However, I think Daniel Jones might be in the running for a 1-year prove-it deal, right? His marketability right now is not that great. He's not going to get a huge contract, even though he's coming off a pretty big contract. But I think the motivation is there for him and a couple others on this list to sign that 1-year prove-it like Darnold did.
I got to be honest, Lance, Daniel Jones intrigues me. I know that, he didn't have success. They had Malik Neighbors. What Kevin Stefanski will ask him to do would seem to be what his strengths are.
Well, I'll say this. So I just said it, and Daniel Jones is a great example. If you're not in the right system with the right people around you, you can go downhill really, really fast. And that's what happened with Daniel Jones. I loved Daniel Jones coming out of Duke. The thing that people don't understand about Daniel Jones is he's an elite athlete. He can run. He can do a lot of things. He can make all the throws. For me, he's been in a tough situation. If you look at Sam Darnold, that's a great example of getting in a scheme that fits what you do. Now, can Daniel Jones be Sam Darnold in terms of success? I don't know, but the skill set for an NFL quarterback being able to make throws on the run, all those things that you and I have talked about that everybody who's really good at this talks about. Daniel Jones can do those things, and it's sometimes a change of scenery, a change of coach, a change of scheme. And I agree with you. This boot, Daniel Jones is a high-end guy you can win with. Can he be a guy you win because of? I'm not sure if that'll ever happen. But you can win with guys in the NFL, play great defense, do those, you can do those things if you have all the other pieces in line. So, yeah, Daniel Jones intrigues me too. And more importantly, he's an athlete. If they struggle in pass protection, he can get out. There's some things that he does that I really liked. I loved him coming out of Duke. So, yeah, first of all, I hope he is good. I like him a lot. So hopefully he has some success moving forward.
All right, this is kind of interesting as well. Browns offense last season. We've talked about it, how much they struggled. This will put it into black and white. They were first in interceptions with 23. They were last in total touchdowns with 29. Second to last in completion percentage, under 60%. There's only 32 teams, tied for 29th in yards per reception, 9.8. Last in third downs made, 70. When an offense performs that last one, third downs made, so you're not holding the ball and you're putting your defense back on the field and you haven't gained any yardage and you're not scoring. That makes the defense look a lot worse than it was.
Oh, there's no question about it. Complimentary football. That makes that when you brought those things up, that reminds me of my dad when we'd be in a staff meeting and my dad would ask me how things are going and I would say, hey, this is going really well. Well, numbers don't lie. And you can say whatever you want in the game of football, but numbers don't lie. And offensively, they need an influx of talent. They need to go back to what Kevin Stefanski does if he's going to be the play caller and the guy with his job on the line. But those numbers tell you they need guys in space. They need to run the ball better. They need the offensive line automatically gets better if they go back to this, go back to this fancy scheme. There's a lot of things involved in terms of there's a lot of pieces that are missing. Obviously, the quarterback piece is the huge one that they got to get, but there's other things that are involved to make this a complete team. It's not a great team, but the roster is not as bad as they were. And if they got a quarterback or somebody who can bridge it and they filled some other holes, they can be highly competitive quickly. But those numbers are alarming. And, I've had some offenses that were that bad, and you tell yourself they're not bad, but numbers don't lie. That's a bad offense.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about that offensive line, plus film breakdown, video analysis of a couple of tackles in the draft that might interest the Browns. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, we alluded to it last segment. How much of the Browns' offensive line struggles, and there were a lot of them, they were injured. That's certainly some of it. How much of it is guys getting old, and how much of it is they were just asking guys to do things in a new scheme that they didn't do very well?
Well, the drop off from what they did, that tells me it's not age. And I've heard a lot. They are aging and they are getting a little bit older, but those guys are also really good at what they do. And I'm going to give you an example. So when the Browns run the ball really well, they can run play action. And as a defensive line, you have to stop the run first. And when you stop the run first, and then that offensive lineman sets the pass, there's a lot that goes into it. The Browns have been in this pass first mode for a couple years now, and that's a totally different mindset for an offensive lineman. This mindset for this offensive line has been run the ball really well, use play action to throw the ball. They can get into some empty sets and throw some play action, but they have been 100% relying on drop back protection with no run game. that allows the defensive line not to play the run. And when you don't play the run, you're just pinning your ears back and coming. That's impossible for an offensive line that has not. That's not why these guys are brought in. That's not what the strength of this is. So they immediately improve, in my opinion, by going back to what they do well. Yes, they've aged. Yes, there's some, but they'll be much better simply by being in a scheme that they had a ton of success in, and that's what they're going to get this fall, I believe.
All right, so offensive tackle is obviously an area the Browns will look at. Let's take a look at a couple of the top-end guys that are out there. First one we're going to start with is Kelvin Banks. So take us through what you see with Banks, what you like with him.
Well, top guy in the draft, you're going to see him here at the left tackle. He's going to pull around. Movement skills are the key at tackle. You're talking about a big guy. Then you're going to see him in space here. You're talking about a guy who's 6'4", 340 running his space here, 320 to 340 range. So the thing you like about him, he's got ability to move like a guard in terms of pulling. He's got great movement skills and power. He locks on. He does all the little things you want as an offensive lineman. His upside is incredibly high. That's why he's number one on my board as compared to Will Campbell. This guy can move in space. He can pass set. He can run. His feet are always right. He has a great base. He gets his hands inside. He has a very violent punch. He does all the little things. Plus, he's a super athlete. So this is the guy, if he's available, if they decide to trade down and they go with the route of we're going to not rebuild but kind of reload, then you start with the offense and defensive line. And this is the guy that I think you got to go with. If you trade down, Banks has got to be your guy. So talented, big, fast, physical. He can do just about everything, especially in this Browns scheme that they're going to go back to. He would be outstanding.
All right, and yeah, you see him there running and moving downfield to lead the way. The next guy we're going to talk about, you mentioned him, Will Campbell from LSU. What do you see with him? What do you like?
Well, you're going to see Will Campbell here. First of all, you're going to see him get to the second level and latch on that linebacker. Really, really good. Just incredible second level. Next thing, you're going to see him reach. He's going to, this is called setting the edge, right? So he's going to set the edge so his back can get out. Now, what Will Campbell does is, I'm not by any means is he Joe Thomas, but what he does, it reminds me of Joe Thomas, he makes everything look really, really easy when he's doing it, and it's not easy. So he has great balance. He always has a good base. He has a really nasty punch when he's punching with pass set. Again, a guy who can pass set. He played for Brian Kelly, which is always, the scheme is important coming into the NFL. So he's been in a huddle. He's run zone. He's run multiple gap schemes. He's done all those things that he will do in the NFL with Brian Kelly, who's more of a pro-style offense. But this guy is 6'6". He's 320, can run really well. Again, I would say his thing that I love about him is he's a technician. He always seems to be in balance. His hands always seem to be right. He knows where he's going. He understands his rules. The only reason I have Banks higher than him is just because Banks has that freakish athleticism that maybe will, this Campbell's a guy who came, he was the Louisiana's top player coming in. He starts as a freshman. He started 38 games. This is a really talented guy, massive guy, him and Banks are guys that can anchor that offensive line for years and years and years if that's the route the Browns go.
All right, so the third draft eligible tackle that we'll look at is Wyatt Milam. What do you see with him? What do you like with Milam?
Well, you're going to see Milam here. So Milam first, you're going to see him here. There's going to be a twist. So he's going to put his hands on the left defensive end. Then he's going to see that backer come in and pick him up. And we'll go back over that again. So really good vibe. Then you're going to see here, this guy is he's going to put his left foot in the ground. He's going to drive this guy down inside. Then he's going to finish. Now, Milam kind of reminds me of Wyatt Teller. So again, you're going to see him, the backside guard's going to pull. He's going to help with his left hand. Then he's going to see that blitzing backer. And that's really good understanding of who's coming. So his number one quality is that he's nasty. And he kind of goes back to that offensive line with Callahan, getting off the line of scrimmage and knocking people backwards. He has as good a punch and as violent as hands as any tackle in the draft, including Banks and Campbell. He's not as athletic or maybe as technically sound, but this is a guy who's trying to put you in the ground. There's a difference. Some guys are trying to block you. Some guys are trying to put you on the ground. This guy's trying to put you on the ground, and you're going to see his eyes where they need to be. He understands fronts. He understands coverages. But what I like about Milam is that he's nasty, and the Browns have to get back to knocking people off the line of scrimmage. If they're going to run the ball, it can't be about finesse and fundamentals all the time. It's got to be, I'm versus you, and I'm going to move you against your will. And this is what this guy does. So if they, this is a day 2, early day 3 guy, but this is a guy that fits tremendously in what the Browns are doing offensively, I believe. So, and again, I just love his mentality. He brings a nasty nasty mentality to that Browns offensive line room with Wyatt Teller, Bitonio, getting back to what they do to try to run the ball and be successful.
How far away, you know, we've talked about the struggles they had. How far away are the Browns from again, being a above average to good offensive line?
Well, first of all, it starts with scheme, right? So you talk about those three guys inside. They are aging, and I understand that. But Posick, Bitonio, and Teller, if they're running zone counter, they're pulling. I remember watching Bitonio in his postseason interview. I only pulled a couple times. So that's what he does really well. Gets in space. They're athletic. They're nasty. Wyatt Teller's a guy who likes to knock you down. You've seen him do it 100 times when he pulls. So I think this scheme immediately gives them confidence because they're going to know what they're doing. And if you know what you're doing, you play with your hair on fire. And that's what they need to do. Now they bring in a tackle that kind of, if they can bring in a tackle that with Conklin, who I think is going to be outstanding. I think he's out at that right. They bring in a tackle at that left side who's athletic and can protect and pass protection and be a part of what they want to do in the run game. They're not that far away because they immediately improve. The age thing to me is overblown. It's because they were running new stuff. You're going to see them have a much more success. Now, will they be dominant like they were 4 years ago? That's yet to be seen. But I think the scheme gives them a chance. They need a tackle. They need some depth. They need an influx of young guys who are nasty and can move their feet. But they're not far away. They're a couple players away, an offensive line coach away from being what they were to a certain extent. And that can be really good with all the pieces around them.
Yeah, you led me to where I was thinking of going. Do you think it's any coincidence at all that they went and got a disciple of Bill Callahan to become their new offensive line coach, a guy who has had head coaching experience?
That's exactly right. So when offensive line, it's the hardest position. It's the most thankless position in the game of football. Nothing happens with the offensive line. They only get their name called when they're holding or offsides. But you are not good at quarterback, running back, receiver unless your offensive line is good. You have to build from the inside out. So I think you're exactly right. Now, the thing that I liked about Callahan when he was here, Callahan is all business guy all day. And I made a point, I've said this to you before, watching my first half hour of practice was always watching Callahan. So no, I don't think it was coincidental at all. I think they're going to say, we're going to go back to what we do, what I know, what I can fix. And that starts with the offensive line. And I think they'll be much improved really, really quick here.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis. Make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, Plain Dealer. We're going to take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Still talking Browns. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, this is Keith calling from Cleveland. I'm calling to dispute one of the voicemailers calls about our owner not wanting to win. The fact that he's been trying to spend to put together some type of team, yeah, the thing with Deshaun didn't work out, but I never can be mad at someone for trying to be aggressive, more for somebody who we thought was a top 5 quarterback. There is no crystal ball to predict your future that Deshaun was going to turn out the way he did. You take me back to that trade, I'd do it again because he was better than Baker. Everyone knew it. It just didn't roll out. But I'll never fault our owner for trying to be aggressive and spending the money to get what we need. Imagine not having an owner who was willing to spend. You think we bad now? I'll let you guys finish that. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, somebody said that he's referring to a voicemail we had yesterday where a caller had said all Jimmy Haslam wants to do is make money and build a stadium. And we pointed out they spend more than pretty much everybody in the NFL. And yeah, are the decisions always right? No. Does he always put his money where they are? Yeah, but the Deshaun Watson thing didn't work out, and you know, the contract is now a huge problem.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate anchor that's just going to loom over this team over this offseason and likely into the next offseason as well before you can finally mitigate those cap hits going forward. But I think going back to what the caller was saying about the Deshaun Watson trade, it's aggression, and I think if you're an organization, you shouldn't be afraid to take chances. You should be willing to swing for the fences. Now, this was the ultimate swing for the fences move. I mean, giving up 3 first-round picks, 3 additional picks, a $230 million fully guaranteed contract. I don't think anybody could have imagined the trade would have panned out as poorly as it has from a Browns perspective. But I think, again, if you're going to be great, sometimes you got to take chances. You got to be willing to be aggressive and take a swing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you just move on to the next thing. But being conservative and really just trying to be patient and with those things, that doesn't always work for success. You can understand the reasoning of the Deshaun Watson trade, although we can't deny that to this point it's basically been a failure.
Yep, but again, the point that I was making, and I agree with the caller, you can call Jimmy Haslam a lot of things. Don't say he doesn't spend money. You can say it hasn't worked out. You can say it hasn't always been well thought out, but he's always spent money to try to do the ultimate, which is win. This one's from The Athletic. These are potential salary cap cuts for every NFL team. We picked out a couple of them that might have some interest. Zadarius Smith, who the Browns traded to the Lions, could very well become a salary cap casualty. Jair Alexander, likely done with Packers, has been hurt the last couple of years. When he's healthy, he's a really good corner. Christian Kirk, we've heard that name bandied about. Joey Bosa, Cooper Kupp. Derek Carr, there's some talk that the Saints could move off of him. And Treylon Burks, big wide receiver who we know the Browns like coming out of the draft, just hasn't panned out for the Titans and hasn't been able to stay on the field. You look at those, do any of those players intrigue you as salary cap cuts?
Derek Carr definitely does. I mean, I know he's not a superstar quarterback, but still productive. Even looking at this past season, played in only 10 games, but completed 67.7% of his passes, 2,100 plus yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, quarterback rating of 101.0. That's the third time in his career he's had a QB rating of over 100. So I think that, considering where the Browns are at quarterback, when you're not sure if you're going to have any quarterbacks from 2024 back on the roster for 2025, if you can get a guy like Derek Carr to at the minimum be a stopgap, that's a pretty darn good stopgap, especially considering the ties to Saints offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak that Kevin Stefanski has. Obviously, there's connections between the two and their offenses, so you would imagine that bringing in a quarterback who's at least solid like Derek Carr can certainly make this offense better. And I've said before that the Browns had the worst quarterback play in 2024. If it was average quarterback play at the minimum, I think you're a 7-8 win football team in 2024. You upgrade that and immediately this becomes a much better football team. And it also takes pressure off needing to start. Say you draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward second overall. If you sign Derek Carr, it kind of takes the pressure off needing either of those two guys to be your day one starter.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Carr as well. I have gotten beat up via voicemail and comments and emails for saying that he's not a real popular choice with some of the Browns fans, but I see that as an upgrade, and I see him as kind of an average to slightly above average NFL quarterback, and I'm with you. If the Browns have average to slightly above average quarterback play instead of historically bad, they're probably a 7-8 win team at a minimum. This is from ESPN. They went through the top 50 free agents that are available, and they have one of them is an ideal fit for the Browns, and it's a familiar name. J.K. Dobbins was with the Chargers. Their rationale here, the offense fits his traits well, both gap and zone scheme, looked explosive on tape throughout the season last year. He did miss 4 games because of a knee sprain. Finished last season with 907 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. I like the thought he'd be another year removed from the serious injury. Now, he hadn't been able to play an entire season in the NFL. He's been banged up to various levels pretty much his entire career.
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice low risk, high reward option for the Browns. I've been saying all, for the last couple of months, and I'm going to keep saying it. In addition to figuring out quarterback, you need to rebuild the running game. And I think what J.K. Dobbins showed last season with the Chargers, played 13 games, still at 900 plus yards, 9 touchdowns, that he's got a lot left in the tank, that he's still a very capable running back when healthy. Finished runner-up for AP Comeback Player of the Year for whatever it's worth. But I think there's a lot to like about J.K. Dobbins. And if you're the Browns, I know this is a really good running back draft. I've said I think you simply have to take a running back somewhere. And I don't think you can go into 2025 anticipating that Nick Chubb's going to be the same guy that he was before that significant knee injury. I felt like in 2024, they needed to have more of a contingency plan than they did, and it didn't work out that way. If you're the Browns, you're able to get J.K. Dobbins, I think you have a nice, at the very minimum, a solid combination with J.K. Dobbins and Jerome Ford in the backfield. And then I would still be looking for one more guy to kind of round that out and really build a trio of very good running backs.
So hold on to that thought. We'll get to the rookie running backs in that class that's really deep and really talented in a minute. This is from NFL.com. Ranking all 32 NFL classes from last year, the rookie classes, and the Browns ranked dead last. It's not a huge surprise given that they didn't draft until 54, but you see Michael Hall had a little bit of the suspension, then he got hurt, didn't play much. Zach Zinter pressed into service, didn't look really good. Again, coming back from a broken leg, that's tough for an offensive lineman. Jamari Thrash didn't flash. Watson really didn't do much. Harden was hurt. Briggs played pretty well, actually, and then Winston Reed, a rookie undrafted guy, played well. The Browns rookies were not great, without question, but they also kind of felt like they were in that window where they weren't really looking to rookies, and that's how you end up at 3-14 and a fan base that is not real happy.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors that play into this low ranking. Number one, again, I think you could argue, I can't remember where I saw this as far as value goes, but I think they had the least draft capital of anybody in football. Not only did they not have a pick in the top 50, they had 2 picks in the top 150, and they didn't make any moves to add any other picks in that area. So right away, you're pretty much up against it as far as draft capital goes. You pretty much don't have a lot of good choices, especially outside the top 150. And the number 2, like you said, really there weren't going to be a lot of opportunities for these guys. Some of these guys like Mike Hall Jr. were drafted to be guys who were developmental. Zach Zinter, in my mind, was a guy who, in a perfect world, should have redshirted last season to really get stronger coming off his broken leg. But, forced to kind of play in last season, and he kind of looked like a guy who needed to get stronger. So I think in a lot of ways, this draft class was kind of in a position where you were going to be lucky to get a lot out of it as rookies, especially, again, considering 4 of those picks were outside the top 150, and those are guys that very rarely make rookie impacts. That said, Mike Hall Jr. showed plenty of flashes. Juwan Briggs looked pretty good in stretches. I still have a lot of belief in Zach Zinter. I think he's got a chance to compete for a potential starting job depending on what happens with Joel Bitonio. At the minimum, getting a year stronger going in year 2. I think he's got it. I think I'm far from giving up on him. It's going to be an important offseason for him. Same with Jamari Thrash. And I think for Nathaniel Watson and Miles Harden, you're looking for them to, at the minimum, be special teams contributors for these next couple seasons.
Yeah, and again, that's, as you mentioned, not many in the top 150. That's why people want to point to last year's draft and others, but they particularly are hard on Andrew Berry. Everything has a reason. Now, having said that, we're going to turn our attention to this year's draft, and it's an important one. The Browns have a lot of draft capital and a lot of flexibility, and quite frankly, they need an infusion of young talent. So it's going to be on Andrew Berry to get that done. And We're going to take a quick time out. When Tim Bielik and I return, we're going to talk plenty about the upcoming draft for the Browns. Sports for CLE. Be right back.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Field Yates on who he has the Browns taking in his latest mock draft.
The Cleveland Browns are taking Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. And let me just again explain my analysis and my thoughts behind this pick here. A lot of people have said, all right, the Browns, like the Titans, might need to take a quarterback this year, right? Deshaun Watson is maybe going to miss, probably going to miss the entirety of next season. On top of that, he's no longer a good quarterback. On top of that, it's the worst contract maybe in the history of the NFL, maybe even all sports. It's awful, no matter what way you view this quarterback situation in Cleveland. Here is the reason why I did not go with a quarterback here, now, is I feel there is a two-man tier at the top of the board where these players are so good and offer so much upside at their respective jobs. In the case of Travis Hunter, it's 2 jobs. In the case of Abdul Carter, you could also say it's 2 jobs because he was an inside linebacker who kicked down to an edge rusher for Penn State. That they're so good at those 2 jobs that you can make the credible case to bypass a quarterback, which, as we know, if a quarterback hits, it's way more valuable than any other position in all the sports. But these guys are so gifted that they had to go 1-2 in some order. In this mock draft, for me, if the Browns do end up changing their stance and trading Myles Garrett, there's no perfect replacement for Myles Garrett. He might be the best defensive player on the planet, but is in this draft class, there's no question the best pass rusher is Abdul Carter. To me, I made it a layup call. The Browns go Abdul Carter at 2.
Tim, I would argue even if Myles Garrett stays, then you have dominant bookends, which you've been trying to get forever. If you view Abdul Carter as that good, you take him at number 2 unless you think that quarterback can start the next 10 years for you.
Yeah, and I pretty much believe they can. I do have that belief in Shedeur Sanders, maybe more so than Cam Ward, because I tweeted about it earlier today. I feel like Cam Ward maybe needs to be coached a specific way to really channel his game, to be a guy who you don't coach the hero ball out of him, but you kind of harness it properly. But when it comes to Abdul Carter, there's no question he's a high-end talent in this class. Same with Travis Hunter, the dual threat superstar from Colorado. They're both the 2 most talented players in this draft class. The only way I feel like if you're the Browns where it makes sense to draft one of those guys for me is if you don't believe whichever quarterback is there is going to be a very good starter at the minimum. Because, like I said, the Browns had the worst quarterback play in 2024 in all of football, right? In all of football, you basically have no quarterbacks on the depth chart if you move on from DTR in particular going into 2025, and you're in an AFC that features Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. You got to compete, and this was a historically bad quarterback group and a historically bad offense. And the reason for that, the quarterback play was not very good. And I know people are going to say that this is a weak quarterback class. It's weak in the sense that there's not. To me, it's weak in the sense that there's not as much depth at the top as 2024. I feel like Shedeur and Cam Ward are going to be the only 2 guys that deserve to go in the first round, deserve to go in the top 10. And if you're the Browns, I think where you have to stand is the quarterback there. Do we think that's a guy to be a franchise quarterback? And if it's yes, you take him without hesitation. If there's any significant hesitation, or you're just not convinced at all, then you take Abdul Carter and then you see if you can find a gem down the road. But bottom line, you still got to address that position, and I don't think you can let Myles Garrett's trade request affect what you do at number 2. I don't think you could just draft his replacement just because you want to trade. Even then, you might not be able to trade him until after June 1st because of his contract situation.
All right, not a deep class relative to quarterbacks in the draft, it is a really deep class relative to running backs. There are reportedly 12 to 15 running backs that could very well be selected between the first and third rounds. These are from NFL Rookie Watch. You see the names there: Genty, Hampton, Johnson, a couple of Ohio State guys, and Cam Scatteraboo. You go to the next level, and there's Devin Neal, Harvey Etienne, Dylan Sampson, Jordan James, Donovan Edwards from Michigan, and then still, we're not done with these. Ollie Gordon, who was really good a couple years ago, not as good as a senior. Sanders, Martinez, Smith from SMU, and Hunter. When you look at those names, and there's a lot of them, Browns aren't taking one at 2, probably not taking one at 33. Third round, who are some guys that you think if they're there, I think the Browns have 2. I think it's like 60-something, 90-something. Which would you target as third-round guys?
Well, when I'm looking at this running back class, a couple things I want to look for. How many tackles are they breaking, and how often are they getting runs of 10-plus or more, what they call the explosive runs? Those are 2 indicators of big NFL success. We saw that last year with Bucky Irving, who, even though he tested poorly at the Combine, was drafted, I think it was late in the 4th round by the Buccaneers, and he had the best rookie running back season of anybody in 2024. So I look at this class, there are a few guys that fit that mold for me. I don't think Caleb Johnson's going to be there at 60. I believe it's 67 that the Browns have in the 3rd round. I think he's sensational. Like, I watched him play against Ohio State, and that was a one-dimensional Iowa team. And Johnson really had to do a lot by himself in that game in particular. And he's got a lot of explosiveness to his game. I think he goes 2nd round somewhere. Same with Amarion Hampton. I wouldn't be surprised if the Ohio State guys, if they don't go in the if they don't go in at the end of the 1st round, they don't get out of the 2nd round. Then we go into round 3. RJ Harvey from UCF fits in that explosive category. And lately, I'm kind of catching Cam Scatteraboo fever a little bit, thinking about him more, going to the Combine next week. He's a guy I'm really excited to see how he does, because this is a guy who, in some ways, you look at him, he looks like your prototypical throwback AFC North running back. And he's got a lot of power, balance, and just the ability to make chunk plays. He may never be a guy who rips off an 80-yard run, but he's going to keep ripping off chunks of 15, 20, 30 yards. He's got incredible balance, elite as a receiver, and the way he played against Texas in that Peach Bowl playoff game, sensational. I thought he was outstanding in that game, and you could argue he was the big reason that Arizona State got back in that game and really pushed Texas all the way into double overtime in that game. So he's a guy I really like. Outside of that group, other guys I like with those explosive numbers, Damian Martinez, Jarquez Hunter, both guys who have good explosive run rates. Watch a little bit of Hunter. There's a lot I like, especially playing well in the SEC. I got to watch a little bit of Damian Martinez to kind of get more of a feel for him, but he put up good numbers as well. No shortage of running backs to pick from, but that's kind of the cluster that I personally would be looking at as far as options for the Browns.
Well, we know that the quarterback play was historically bad. The offense was bad. How much do you think an efficient offense helps the defense return to, top half of the league from where they were?
A ton. I mean, I feel like the term complementary football always gets thrown around. It's a buzzword. It's a buzz phrase that gets thrown out there, but I think there's truth to it, especially in the NFL. I don't think you can win with one unit being so much better than the other. I think the Browns, we obviously saw defense was not great, but the offense was historically bad. Then you look at another team like the Cincinnati Bengals. They had an all-world offense. Joe Burrow probably could have been MVP if the Bengals had made the playoffs, but their defense was so bad that they couldn't get into the postseason. They missed it on the last day of the season. So you have to have both. And I think the defense would be better if they had a little help from the offense, where they're not feeling as much pressure to hold teams under 14 points, under 20 points, forced to get third down stops. If you could give this team defense time to rest on the sidelines, you can give them some room to work with and a chance to play from in front, which they barely did, then I think you could see a different defense. We saw how just great that pass rush can be in 2023. That's because in some areas they were leading. And when you lead, it's so much easier to get after the quarterback with that pass rush. When you're trailing, you can't really do that. So I think you have to have an offense that's capable of scoring to help out the defense. That's a big reason why I keep saying this has to be an offense-heavy draft, I think, for the Browns.
Tim Bielik, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff, especially relative to the draft, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. We're going to turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Full Court Cleveland straight ahead. Stay with us. Full Court Action is a half-hour devoted exclusively to men's and women's basketball from across the Mid-American Conference. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Bacon. Join me at 6:30 Tuesday nights, and we'll meet the coaches and players from the Mid-American Conference who are making an impact in basketball. Full Court Action will spotlight the top plays and performances from all across the Mid-American Conference with some historical action as well. Catch Full Court Action Tuesday nights at 6:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers on Sports4CLE. Another day off, and then the Cavs will get back at it in Brooklyn against the Nets. National NBA analyst Brian Windhorst, his thoughts on who he believes are true NBA championship contenders.
Right now, there's three teams I can see win the championship. Oklahoma City, Boston, and Cleveland. I might get there with Denver. I might get there with Memphis. But right now, those are the three teams that I believe can do it. There's a lot of people that don't believe in the Thunder. I'm not one of them. I believe in them.
Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com as well as Full Court Cleveland. So, Sam, I can't argue with the thought Thunder, Celtics, Cavs.
That's the list. I would agree with that myself. You know, as far as the first, 54 games that we're at now, yeah, to me, those are the teams that clearly are above everybody else. I'm with Brian Windhorst there. The Nuggets could potentially get there, although their bench is, I don't think we've seen a bench that bad that from a contender in 30, 40 years. But that said, the Cavs are definitely on that list, and a big reason why is because of what they've shown us already. And now you add DeAndre Hunter into the mix without really giving up too much in Yang and LeVert. I think you're looking at a team that's 44-10 and could still get to another level with this new addition. So, yeah, I think that if you had to say we had the three teams on the list, that would be it. You know, Oklahoma City to me, obviously, not just with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but they play very much like the Cavs. They move the ball and share the ball, and they're an excellent defensive team. And of course, Boston, the defending champs, you can never count them out as long as they're totally healthy.
How curious and anxious are you to see Kenny Atkinson in a playoff series? I love what he's done. He's shown the willingness to change in games when it's not working. I'm really curious as to how he coaches and it makes adjustments in a series.
Yeah, you know what I really like about him, and I am anxious to see that too. I think a lot of people in Cleveland are because, you know, of this regular season success. Whereas the playoffs are a different animal. They're a whole season unto themselves. The teams are allowed to get away with more defensively. And, you know, the Cavs their offense has been fantastic in terms of their shooting percentage or three-point shooting percentage, the way they're scoring. I think all of those, you add that all up and you think, well, how is this going to look in the playoffs? Because they're getting such good looks at the basket in the regular season. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he's able to adjust and adapt. But the thing I like about Kenny Atkinson is that's what he's talking about. We just need to get all this stuff mastered, whether it's offense or defense, for the playoffs. And, you know, at the beginning of the season in training camp, Kenny Atkinson said, look, it's all about getting yourself ready for the postseason. He said, this team has not done well in the postseason. That needs to be our goal. And he's really continuing to push that message that, yeah, 44-10 is great, but we're all about the postseason.
Playoff or All-Star break, it's tough when you're playing so well that you don't play together for a week. Now, they had guys playing the All-Star game. I get that. How important is it for the Cavs not to – and is there a concern that they could not be as sharp as they were after a week layoff?
You know, I think in previous seasons there was that concern. I don't think that that's so much a concern now. That was another message that Kenny Atkinson has said, and said it in training camp. He said, "Look, I looked at the team over the last 2 years with Donovan Mitchell, and they always played their best basketball before the All-Star break." And he said, "You can't have that. You've got to play your best basketball of the year when it means the most." And he said, our intention is to be better after the All-Star break so we have some momentum going into the playoffs. And I think that those messages have been very well received so far. You know, we'll have to wait and see how they do after the break. But I think that that's been a thing that, you know, we're always worried about if you're a Cavs fan is, yeah, this, you know, I think last year going into the All-Star break, they had won 18 of 20 or something, and then just looked like a totally different team. I don't think that Kenny Atkinson will allow that to happen. I think that he's going to be, you know, more cognizant of this team needs to be playing its best right now. In these kind of dog days of the season in March, when everybody's paying attention to college basketball, the NCAA tournament, and the NBA guys are just kind of going through the motions, I don't think he's going to allow that. They have the talent now. They have another year of experience that I don't think that the players will allow that. And of course, they have now the depth with DeAndre Hunter, and eventually, I think very soon, we may even see him this week, Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade coming back. So with good health, I think this team is in a really good spot to avoid kind of those second or post All-Star break doldrums.
We talk about the All-Star break. Season's 2/3 of the way over. It's 28 games left, and at 44-10, it's the best 54-game stretch in franchise history. Also, 15th best in NBA history. That kind of speaks to how good this first year under Kenny Atkinson has been.
Yeah, you know, you talk about 54 games, and obviously the 44-10 record speaks for itself, but there's been so few hiccups along the way. You know, you had the bad game in Oklahoma City. You lost to Boston at home. Of course, all these happened before you got DeAndre Hunter. And I think that he's going to be such a difference maker in terms of what they needed. You know, all before the break, all we heard about was how they could probably use a 3-and-D wing with size. Well, they went out and got that guy who's having a career year, was having a career year with the Hawks, was candidate for 6 Man of the Year award, probably the front runner for that. So even though they're 44-10, I really think this is a team that hasn't peaked yet. You know, and I think that they think they haven't peaked. They really believe they haven't. So, yeah, to me, it's just already really appreciate what they've done, but know it can still get a lot better.
So this is from NBA.com. It's 3 notes on the Cavaliers. They're scoring 8.7 more points per 100 possessions than the league average, which would be the second best differential 29 seasons for play-by-play data. Effective field goal percentage is almost 59%, which would be the highest in NBA history. Assist-to-turnover ratio, 2.23. That is ridiculous. 4th highest in 48 seasons. They're also the only team that ranks in the top 5 in field goal percentage in the paint, mid-range, and three-point range. So all 3 levels. And they've played the league's easiest schedule regarding cumulative opponents' winning percentage, but they also have a 20-6 record between the 16 teams that they've played that are currently above 500. Anyway, you can take any of those metrics that you want, and what it says is they're among the league's best.
Yeah, and that's been a big thing for Kenny Atkinson is shot quality. You know, that's one of the analytics that the Cavaliers really hone in on is not just are we scoring a bunch of points, are we shooting the ball well, but why are we shooting the ball well? Well, it's because we're getting open looks. It's very rare that you watch a Cavs game, and this is the first time I've really been able to say this about any team where you think, you know, they're not forcing anything. And that goes a long way in your field goal percentage, your ability to score points, is they're getting good looks at the basket. And that speaks to the coaching staff and the buy-in from the players. And that stat that you read last, Dave, for the 20-6 against the above 500 and above teams, that bodes well for the postseason, right? I mean, because those are the teams you're going to be playing in a 7-game series are teams with, for the most part, teams with winning records and contenders. So the fact that the Cavs have had pretty good success against those type of teams really just speaks to why you can believe in them moving forward after the All-Star break.
We talked a little bit of trade deadline. They go out and they get a piece that makes them better. If you're in that locker room, you have to believe, hey, front office is saying they believe in us. They think we can win it all, which is a great message to have as a player.
Yeah, the culture that they've built, and it's such an overused word, but it's really true. The culture began with Kobe Altman and Mike Gansey in the front office, and Kenny Atkinson really, brought in kind of a fresh philosophy and perspective and, success. He comes with a championship ring from his time as an assistant with the Warriors. So, yeah, all these things have resulted in, frankly, I've been doing this 17 years, the best locker room I've ever seen in terms of just the connectivity of the guys and their belief in the coaching staff and the system. I can think of plenty of times where the coach would be in there or you could just get the sense from the players in the locker room that, yeah, they weren't sitting around praising the coach very often. It's hard to do when you're a player in the NBA, but Kenny Atkinson, that's the thing that's been nice about him, I think, is that he has so much experience in the NBA and so much experience in winning situations that automatically the players believed in him. And then you go out and you score like they score. Everybody's getting shots. It's a share the wealth offense. There's no selfishness to this. And you're winning games. You're 44-10. That tends to make locker rooms better, and therefore, if you're winning games, you tend to believe what the coach is selling a little bit more.
Without question. Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right, Dave, thanks so much for having me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, make sure you check him out, host of Full Court Cleveland. You can also check out his work. Hoopswire.com, always great NBA stuff as well as focusing on the Cavs. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.